All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for coming to this year's district judge panel. My name's Tommy Gallagher. I'm one of the Team 64 state officers. We also have Trinjan Kaur here. She's another state officer. And we're really just going to be trying to get all of you guys as prep for districts as possible. We are recording this just so everyone is aware and so any other members can watch it. But with us today, we have Carmen. He's been a judge with DECA for 49 years. At all levels, district, states, and ICDCs. 28 or 29 ICDCs he has judged. So definitely lots of experience that you guys can question and ask him tons of questions. And we also have Robert Pacheco from Apponequet. He is a 2-time glass winner, 4-time ICDC competitor. Definitely someone you guys can get a lot of tips from so that you guys can all get glass too. So just now, Trinjan and I are each going to ask kind of a question, and then we'll open it up to you guys so you can ask your own personal questions. But I guess the first question for me, I'll throw it to Mr. Carmen first. What's kind of the best way to make a good first impression when you go into your role play?
The way that you come in and introduce yourself and the way that you greet the judge. I always tell everybody the first 30 seconds with that judge is probably the most important amount of time during the entire competition. Believe it or not, it's the way that you come in. You know, I hate to say first impressions count, but first impressions mean a lot. And that's the way I look at it every time somebody comes in and sits at the table.
And Mr. Pacheco, when you are going into a role play, what's kind of like your big tip for how to make that first impression?
Yeah, I think I've also judged. I judged at states last year. I think kind of one of the biggest things that I always did was make sure you're in character. Make sure that you're in the role that the role play has told you to be in, and right off the bat, you kind of start off introducing yourself as that person, like talking like that person would, whether it's a financial planner, an accountant, or what have you. Just really make sure you're in character and you're really just try to be as professional as possible when you start off. I think that sets a great tone, not only for you, but then also for the judge to understand, wow, this person's really, really polished and understands the case.
Mr. Carmen, I have a question for you. What do you look for when students are presenting? Specifically, what impresses you?
Eye-to-eye contact, to remain focused. There's a lot, as you all know, that, there's a lot of distractions that happens during the competition, whether it be the district, states, or ICDC. So it's really important to just stay focused and, again, maintain that eye-to-eye contact and stay professional.
And Mr. Pacheco, I have a question for you. So have you ever been in a situation in a role play where you don't really understand a question that the judge is asking? You found yourself that you haven't prepared for the question. How did you find a way to overcome that and answer the judge's question in a way that was able to make it seem like you knew a lot about what you were talking about, even if you were slightly confused when they first asked it?
Yeah, I think kind of maybe the first thing is you can ask them to repeat the question and then see if that kind of helps you understand it. Maybe you missed a word or misheard it. And then I think secondly, I think it's important to figure out quickly kind of what you do know about the question. So maybe there's a certain word that you can hone in on, or term, or a certain PI that might relate to the question. And then from there, kind of explain that part of it. Like, oh, like just go on about that PI, that term, explain that. And then say, well, I'm unsure on that, but I'll get back to you. I think the worst thing you can do is if you just come in and then like you don't understand the question, you just completely misexplain kind of what the judge wants because you don't understand it and you don't tell them that you don't understand it. Like if you're just honest and say, I'll get back to you, like I know this part, explain that, and then say, I'll get back to you on this other part. I think that makes you look a lot more professional and stand out a lot more compared to if you just go in there and just make something up for an answer.
So now we just kind of want to open the floor for you guys to ask your questions. So if you do have a question, just raise your hand. We'll call on you guys and you can ask your questions.
Divya, you can unmute and answer your question.
Hi everyone, my name's Thea. I'm part of Bedford's DECA. I had a question on presenting. Do judges prefer if you state your conclusion and then back it up with your reasoning, or state your reasoning first and end up at your conclusion?
I guess I could, oh,
You
you
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Okay. All I was going to say was, as long as you hit all of the areas that you need to hit, you only have, I'm sure you've all been told this, but you only have a certain amount of time with us. And it's very, very important that you don't run over on your time. And it's also important that you try to cover everything within that time limit. Once the time is up, it's up and we have to stop. And if you haven't covered everything, it's going to affect your score.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I could touch on this. When I competed, I kind of saw it as three parts. An introduction, which was just a brief, hello, how are you doing? Getting the formalities out of the way. And then kind of the real meat of the role play was the middle section, which is where you try to hit on all the PIs and then explain that thoroughly. And then also within that, give a recommendation or answer the prompt kind of within that. And then at the end, just a brief kind of summarizing conclusion at the end. Although I will say, I mean, at the end of the day, it's really whatever works best for you and however you think, as long as one, you answer everything that the question or the prompt saying, and then two, as long as it makes sense and it's coherent, I really, however you want to answer it, just make sure you have those two things.
I agree.
Will, you can go next.
Thank you. My name is Will. I'm from the show by DECA. So I was just wondering, I know there's a lot of students in DECA are going to know a lot of the information that's asked on these questions. So I'm just wondering, what do you guys recommend to help us stand out among our competitors? Like, is there anything we can do on the role plays that could be different from other people that could give us an edge?
Yeah, I can answer this. I think one of the biggest things you can do, particularly on the role play front, is just really have a depth of knowledge and then also breadth. I think being able to really hit home and really explain well all the performance indicators and then do it for each one is very important. But then if you want to kind of go above and beyond, I think it's all about connecting it to a bigger picture, a more relevant event. So back when I competed, I'd always try to either hook in the performance indicator either to maybe a current event going on, to an article or a book or something that I've read that's connected to it, or even just tell a story that connects that I've heard from a family member or from a friend. I was in personal financial literacy, so usually I could always connect it. Like if you're talking about insurance and gap insurance, you could maybe tell a story about someone who didn't have that and like ended up miss it losing a lot of money because they didn't have gap insurance. But I think just showing that you have a real depth and understanding of the material, and you kind of go above and beyond just studying the PIs, and really can, like I said, either have a story or just somehow connect it to a bigger picture.
One of the things that I always tell people when I have the opportunity is I know this sounds a bit, strange, but the way that you dress even is something that you can make yourself stand out. And what I mean by that is, we see a lot of competitors during the course of the day, and by the time you get to the 17th or 18th one, you're trying to remember, okay, who was that second or third person that I saw today? And I'm not expecting everybody to go out, I'm not expecting the boys to go out and buy bow ties, but I got to be honest with you, at ICDC, when a team comes in or an individual comes in with a bow tie instead of a tie, I say to myself, okay, I remember that one, because that was the one that, again, it sounds strange, but it's believe it or not, something that you wear, something that you say, you have to try to stand out from the other competitors, because we just see so many during the course of the day. If that makes any sense, well, then that's, I don't know. Robert, have you ever experienced anything like that?
Yeah, I say when I judged for the first time, it was like, wow, like you have a new respect for it with like just how many people you see and how hard it is to differentiate at the end of the day when you're scoring and giving the final ranking. Like you said, it's just so hard. And I do agree that like the littlest bit, especially with states where you don't have to wear the blazer, like just the little bit you can do to make yourself stand out appearance wise, just the way you dress, I think can go a long way at the end of the day when the judge is ranking kind of who they want to see first, second, third.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Hope that helps.
It does. Thank you very much.
Marina, you can ask your question.
I'm with Bristol Permit DECA, and I wanted to ask, what are your best tips for especially first years? Like I have a lot of first years and they're super nervous. So what are your best tips for them to stay confident and really keep their confidence while they're doing a role play or a presentation?
I'll just say, be yourself. Don't try to be anything that you're not. Just come in, be yourself. And again, I hope I don't sound kind of strange here, but enjoy the time that you're experiencing. You are going to come out of this, whether it's districts, states, or ICDC, you're going to come out of this with something new. You're going to come out of this with a new experience. You may or may not win. You may or may not go any further than districts. You may or may not go any further than states. But I will guarantee you one thing is that you will come out of the competition and go home with something new. And I don't care what that is, but after so many years of doing this, every time I go to one of these events, I come out of there with, a sort of a renewed spirit about where we're headed in this country because of what you all do and how you all, present yourselves. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I would second just going into it with the mindset of it's a new experience and you're going to learn from it. And then again, just enjoy it as much as you can. I'd also add in just really getting into the case and really just getting into the mindset of, you're no longer a freshman in high school. You're now, this person's CPA or this person's financial planner, and just really getting into that mindset and really enjoying and really embodying kind of the role play.
Great, thank you.
Mckenzie, you can ask your question.
Okay, so hi, I'm Mckenzie Wood. I'm from Algonquin Regional High School. And my question was regarding what seems to be the most hardest thing for people to grasp in the role play. So it could be anywhere from like PIs to 21st century skills. What seems to be like the most common thing that people just can't seem to get a hold of?
That's a tough question, actually. I think overcoming your anxiety and not being nervous. Kind of look at it that the judge is probably more nervous about being there and whether or not they're going to do the right thing. Maybe even more so than all of you. We have because of the nature of our competition, there's a lot of judges that have never judged before. So they're going to be just as nervous as you are. So, just overcome that nervousness and just go in with confidence.
Yeah, this is a really tough one. I think I completely second and agree with that. And I think also kind of more on a macro level, I think understanding that the judge is not an expert in the category they're judging. Like, just because you're judging an entrepreneurship or a business law and ethics doesn't mean you're presenting to a lawyer who's had like 30 years in the industry. So really understanding that the case and the information might be as new to the judge as it is, if not more new than compared to you, and really explaining it well, that like explain it to the judge as if you're starting from zero and the judge has no clue kind of what the category is or what the performance indicator is, and then just starting from zero and explaining it that way, I think can really help, especially again, like if you have a judge that isn't an expert in the topic. So really starting from zero.
Celia, you can ask your question.
Hi, I'm Celia. I'm from Bishop Fenwick High School, DECA. And I know to stand out, a lot of people say make business cards or visuals. What other ways or other visuals do you recommend aside from a business card?
Yeah, I'd say first, kind of start just broadly what kind of person you are. I was never good at visuals. I'm not a good artist. I'm not that creative. So instead of visuals, I would always go, like I said, telling a story, and maybe more so working on talking and explaining and really having a depth in my explanation and a clarity and conciseness in my explanation of the PIs, that I think that helped me stand out and making it connect to a more, like I said, macro thing. And then on the other side, if you are a visual person and you are good at it, I think kind of as a judge, I think it's great to see slides and it's great to see, helpful pamphlets and business cards made. I think kind of the biggest thing you can do is add some type of graph if it's a concept that's easily graphable, but I think graphs and tables are really your friend and really can help make a complex topic really kind of boil down to some key points if you have it in a graph and a table.
I agree with that too. Rather than concentrate on visuals, I'm kind of impressed that within after only 10 minutes in the prep area, you have enough time to do all that. So it's kind of impressive to me. But, you know, think of yourselves going into a business meeting, and you're going into a business meeting to do what? You're going into the business meeting to close the deal. Whatever role play you're involved in, you're trying to present your case, present everything, and then close the sale, close the deal. I have several that I've done. I do a lot of written events, but I also do the role plays. But I have several that after the role play is done, you know, they'll close the meeting by say, can I call you next week to follow up on our meeting today? You know, they really get into the role play. They really get into the event, and they may not have closed the deal, but they want to follow up with me and call me in a couple of days to see if I've made up my mind. So that's, you know, it again, you're looking for things that you can remember about the third or fourth person that you saw after you see 15. I think it's important to just, you know, finish up the role play and leave it at that. If you can't finish it up that day, then you want to follow up with the owner of the business or whatever role play you're doing.
Maya, you can ask your question.
Hi, I'm Maya. I'm from Bedford, and I was wondering that when the scores get really close or when there's a tie, what is something that the judges look for to determine who continues on?
That's another tough question. The job of a judge is so difficult, especially when you get into the ICDC competition. Everyone that you see, you want to give 100, and you can't. And I usually see, especially in the ICDC, you see 20 teams, 20 individuals, whatever. And the first day, out of that 20, the first round, you can only choose the top 2 that continue on to the final round the next day. It is so difficult that the most minute thing you're looking for to try to determine whether it's a 97 or a 96. And we sometimes, I say most of the time, we don't know about the other scores and how there's a lot that goes into the final scores and the final rankings. So our scores might not be the ones that determine it. It might be your written test. It might be the other role plays. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's so difficult, especially at the ICDC level, even for us.
Yeah, I agree. I had a few ties, I know, at states last year. And it's really hard to see kind of who you want to like give that bump to get them into that top 3 or to that top 2. I think kind of one of the things that I try to boil it down to when I judge is kind of the overall impression as far as how much knowledge they have in the topic overall. So everyone comes in, you all have the same performance indicators. And so we have that goes into it that, okay, these people looked better than these people in the performance indicators. But if I have 2 people who are tied with score wise and they both performed the same in performance indicators, I kind of look into is who had more of that breadth of knowledge that like they could have talked about almost, it seemed they had the impression that they could talk about any performance indicator as deep, if not deeper than what they gave me on these. And if there's a team that I really have a sense that, or individual that I really have a sense that like they can go the extra mile and like talk about this whole category for hours, no matter what PI they get, they're usually the one that I bump up. And again, that's not necessarily a quantitative kind of white and black line there, but it's more so just the overall impression of how much knowledge you seem to have about the category and how in depth you really feel your knowledge goes.
Do we have any more questions? If you guys don't want to unmute, you can type them out in the chat too. Kavya, you can ask your question.
My question is for presentations of written projects, specifically at the ICDC level. Do judges look for a more formal presentation of just explaining and describing the facts of your project, or a more interactive and conversational presentation? And if that's the case, then how could we make them more conversational?
I'll answer that as far as the written events, because that's pretty much what I do at ICDC. It's very, very important that if you, particularly if you have a team of 2, 3 members, or even I've had 4, that you practice and everybody has equal participation in that presentation. And, you know, try not to get too detailed. Again, you don't have a lot of time. And I've had a lot of, even at the ICDC level, that they run out of time. And it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. The other thing that I have a little pet peeve about, and it's amazing how many at ICDC I see like this, lose your notes. Don't use them. You know, at that level, by the time you get to ICDC, you should know your material. And there's nothing more disappointing than to have somebody come in and read to me off of an index card at the ICDC level. So memorize your project, memorize your presentation. And if you have more than one, if you're working with a team, make sure it's equal participation by all parties.
Yeah, I haven't done papers, or at least I haven't judged them. But as someone who runs, I run a club at the college that I'm at, and it's stock pitches, and it's usually teams of about 4 or 5. And I think one of the biggest red flags, someone asked that in the chat too, is when you have 2 or more people and only 1 or 2 people end up doing the talking out of the whole group. I think, like, even if it's great information and even if it's a great presentation, just the fact that it's 2 people kind of running the show, I think it really reflects poorly on that group. And I think that's kind of, as having been a judge of groups, I think that's kind of one of my biggest pet peeves on my end, is when you have 2 people, but only one person talks and the other one just sits there. Or if you have like a group of 4 or 3, and it's like 2 people and the other one's just kind of hanging out there. I think that's where the rubber meets the road. And if there is a tie and that one group had everyone contributing and one person only had 2 out of the 3, like that'll make the difference.
Right.
Michelle, you can ask your question.
Hi, I have a quick question regarding the day of the event, and I was wondering, what can the members expect, like the day of, like their duration of, like the duration of the whole event, how much time they have to wait in between everything?
I know as far as, I don't know a lot of how the schedules are done, to be honest, but, you know, you need to make sure that you are on time. It's very, very important because of the number of competitors that you know where you're going, that you are on time for all of your events. It's not possible, especially at the ICDC level, it's not possible to fit you in if you show up late. So, you know your schedule beforehand and be on time, and everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, I absolutely second that. And then I'll also add kind of one of the biggest things they can expect, at least from my history of competing, is like it's natural to wait. Usually, I'd say more often than not, things run behind. That doesn't mean show up exactly at your role play time or later. It means still show up early, but usually events do end up running a little behind. And so expect to maybe hang around for a little while.
Okay, thank you so much.
Marini, you can ask your question.
Hi, just one more question about standing out. So what is one time that a contestant, maybe a written or a role play, really stuck out to you and made a deep impression during their competition?
You know, one of the things that it's, I kind of look at the human aspect of things. I always think back to one particular project that it was actually a Massachusetts team, and you know the human aspects of things, real life, real life issues, and it's you kind of remember those projects and those presentations. It's something that you kind of always remember. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I have a particular one in mind that I still think about to this day, and that was a few years ago. So, real life, if you can make a project out of something that happened at your school, or, something that, can stand out in that nature, the judges remember stuff like that. I know I do.
Yeah, I could go kind of along similar lines. Is I think if you really have a passion for the topic, like I know if you have a passion for a paper or a presentation, you can kind of take that and run with it. As far as picking an area that kind of relates, I know with role plays, it might be a little harder, that this particular case study that you end up getting, you might not feel particularly passionate about. But I think really portraying, like, even if it isn't something that, you're the craziest about or you're really passionate about, really portraying to the judge that you're really passionate about the case study that you have in front of you, and really showing that you're really getting into it, you're really passionate about it, and you really have a depth of knowledge in that area. And I think, to me, well, some of the most memorable people, I think, are, again, some of the people who really get into it and really have a show of passion, whether they're really passionate about, apparel merchandising or not. They really show to the judge that they have a passion for it, and they really come across as someone who's really passionate and really into the role play. And I think those are the people who really stand out as overall, at the end of the day, like, hey, these people really seemed into it. They really seemed to like the case. They really seemed to grasp it. And then also kind of looking back, you know, after a year or two, really thinking back, like, you know, I really had a passionate team that year.
Kathleen, to answer your question, we are encouraging students to go back to shaking hands because there's no more restrictions this year on that. Do we have any other questions? Mr. Carmen, Mr. Pacheco, is there anything else that you guys want to kind of add in? Is there anything else that you guys want to like add in as kind of like a final thought before we end the Zoom?
I just want to reiterate, do not stress out on any of the competition. I've already started to read projects for one district coming up next week. You know, I'll be judging at 2 district events next week and at least 2 in January that I know of. I'm going up to New Hampshire to judge an event up in New Hampshire in February. You know, just enjoy it. Enjoy the time that you have at these events. Don't stress out on it. I will guarantee, I'll say it again, I'll guarantee you're going to come out of those competitions and go back to your school and you will have something that you can remember, whether you're a freshman, whether you're a sophomore, or even if you're a senior, you're going to come out of these competitions with something. And I can't stress that enough. You know, enjoy the moment and savor it in something that you will remember for a long time.
I 100% agree. I think kind of, again, the biggest thing I think is, again, remember the judge is just someone who's there for the day. And at the end of the day, they have to look at all these presentations. And I think Kim had mentioned this, like at the end of the day, they're worrying about kind of, are they scoring good enough? Or, you know, did they pick the right teams to move on? So I think, just to reiterate, I think they're as nervous as you are. And I think also going into it, knowing that, like, again, these judges aren't complete experts in the topic. So really making sure you kind of boil it down and explain it as if they are unfamiliar with the topic. And I think, again, just going the extra mile and showing passion and real professionalism can go a long way.
We have one more question in the chat. What is a good way to establish the role you are playing in the role play?
I think first off, just coming in and introducing yourself as that. So if it's a financial planner, say, and the judge is, let's say, Mr. Smith, say, hello, Mr. Smith, I'm the financial planner, Robert Pacheco. I, you know, looked over the notes from our last meeting, if that's what's in there, and just really making sure you dig into the details of the case and really understand kind of who you are, who the judge is, and kind of any prior interaction history. So if you met last week in their office and they kind of talked about, these are my questions, can you find answers? Don't say, nice meeting you for the first time. So really going in depth and like understanding kind of prior meeting history and also exactly who you are and who that judge is.
I absolutely agree. That's, again, remember everybody, your first 30 seconds with that judge is probably the most important time you're going to have with that individual. So.
Thank you again so much for coming and helping host this judge panel, Mr. Carmen and Mr. Pacheco. We really appreciate it so much. Thank you for your time. I hope you all have a good night. And thank you to all of our members who attended the Zoom. It wouldn't be the same without all of your guys' amazing questions.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Trinjan.
Yes.
Sorry, I just realized I missed the chat that we were supposed to drop our chapter in there. So I am Neshoba Regional. Do you want me to just put that in there right now?
Yes, please. Just that when we go through it, we can see it all at once.
All right. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Have a nice night.
You too.
Hey, I'm sorry. I messed up. I'm not precisely sure what a chapter is. I just put what town my school is in. Is that all right?
Yeah, what town are you?
Billerica.
Yes, that's what your chapter name is.
All right. I was not sure. I was confused. I was like, wait a minute, I may have messed up. All right, thank you. Have a good night.
No problem. Have a nice night.
Donna, will we see you next week up in Danvers?
You will. I'm actually, or I'm going to be we have 3